Good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is John Shaquille Poitier Jr., and welcome back to my podcast, Darling, I'm Depressed Again. Don't Tell My Mother, where we discuss mental health and mental issues and everything regarding mental health in the youth, the elderly, high schoolers, primary school, tertiary students, listen, college students. Once you are a person, once you are breathing from every creed, nationality, race, origin, we have something for you here. Now, each episode, we have a certain word that describes everything. It gives a certain je ne sais quoi, if you will. It tells us what the episode is going to be about. And this episode, the word is impenitent. Impenitent. So, without further ado, let's get into the episode. So, my sister, my oldest sister Jojo, always loved to say that I like attention, right? She always liked to say I like attention. She's not entirely wrong. She's not entirely wrong. From I was younger, like much younger, like when I was like, I think much younger, like I'm 100 or something. But when I was much younger, I always enjoyed sharing my gift, whether it was writing, whether it was talking to my family. It's just I always loved having that light being shown, looked at. I always loved sharing that light that I feel is something that's naturally given to me, that's naturally there. So when it came down to even recognizing what my gift was and knowing that I have a gift for words, knowing I have a gift for writing, for understanding, for literature in the broader and the specific sense, it was like, I want to share this with the world. I want to. I absolutely want to. And I remember when I first came to college, I remember it like yesterday. And when I had first joined the speech and debate team, and there was a debate I had done that I lost on purpose. Now, walk with me here, right? Walk with me here. I'm in a new environment. I don't exactly know what's going on. And my first thought was, in order to acclimate, I have to dim myself. Now, I'm not saying I'm the best debater in the world. I'm not saying I'm Denzel Washington, the great debaters, like I'm the whole, shebang. But what I am saying is that I do know I have trained for a considerable amount of time in this specific area. And I do know how to present myself in said area. And I do know that the presentation that I gave was not exactly what it should be. It wasn't what it should be. I dimmed it substantially so that I could fit in better, right? Now, for a person who has always loved sharing his words, always loved sharing that gift and that light I feel exists within me, because that is how I understand talent. That is how I understand a gift. A gift is the way you interpret God's divinity. It's the way God allows you to interpret his divinity, his light, his goodness. So for my oldest sister, God allows her to interpret his divinity, his light, and his goodness through her voice. She is a wonderful singer. She is extraordinary in what she can do with her song, with songs and all of that. And my second oldest sister, God allows her to interpret that light and that divinity in the way that she dances. So for me, it's like, when it came down to, oh, my sister's an amazing dancer. Jonique is a phenomenal, like, wonderful dancer. When it came down to looking at them both and looking at myself and looking at the way that I interpreted the light of God, that I interpreted God's divinity, it came down to my voice and my words. And I subconsciously made a promise with myself when I was much younger that I would never dim that, right? Because I feel that when you dim your gift, when you dim your talent, when you dim who you are to make yourself more digestible for a room that was never meant to hold you, you end up in places that you were never meant to be. You end up stuck in places that you were never meant to be stuck in. And because of that, you build these feelings of resentment, of hatred, of disdain towards your situation. So for me, especially when I had first come into college and losing that debate, I became a bit resentful towards myself because I had dimmed my light to make myself more digestible. Because you always hear, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. You don't come into a new place and you don't immediately say, oh, well, I know how to do this. I know how to do that. I know blah, 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 blah. You don't come into a new place and you do that. You sit small, then your name get called, and then, you know, you do whatever after you earn your time. But when you have a gift, and that's why my word of the episode is impenitent, because impenitent, according to Oxford Dictionary, means not feeling shame or regret about one's actions or attitudes, right? When you have a gift, you can't afford to be repentant about your attitude, about knowing that you are gifted, about knowing that you are talented. You cannot be you cannot repent your gift. You cannot be repentive of your gift, because when you are, you begin to resent the person who carries that gift. You begin to resent yourself for the light you carry. You begin to resent yourself for the way that you shine, the way that God allows you to shine in that respective field, in that respective talent, in that respective way. And from that first debate onwards, I told myself, because I remember the feeling, I remember feeling crushed that I had lost. And I remember feeling, and mind you, this wasn't no big thing, you know. It wasn't like this was no boom, bam, dam, slam.com. No, this was just like a short in house debate. It wasn't meant to be long. And I lost it on purpose. And I was like, why the hell would I do that? JJ, why would you do this? Why did you do this? And even asking myself the question, I realized that in dimming my light, I hadn't done anything to exemplify anyone else. All I had done was make myself smaller to fit into a box that no one gave me. And when you make yourself smaller to try to fit into a box that you yourself created, you will never be small enough to fit into that box. Because the smaller you make yourself, the smaller the box becomes. And the smaller the box becomes, the more you will try to fit it. And as you continue trying to fit a box that's not meant for you to fit in, you begin to break yourself apart. You begin to realign yourself, realign your values, realign your expectations with what you think belongs in the box. And I had to learn to regain my impenitence. My impenitence. I had to learn to regain that thought, that mindset that I am gifted and it is okay to be gifted. Recognizing that I am gifted does not mean that I lack humility. Because if you think that in order for me to be humble, I must be self depreciating, then you don't want a humble person. You want someone who bullies themselves, right? If you think that I have to tear myself down to give you the material to build yourself up, then you don't want a person who is actually humble. What you want is a punching bag. And I had to learn to recognize that. I had to learn to recognize that not only within myself, but within other people. Because there are people who will facilitate an environment where they will allow you to consistently tear yourself down and call it humility, when, as a matter of fact, it's not humility. They receive the energy from you tearing yourself down. They receive your lack of hope. They receive your loss of self-love, and they use that and they feed off of it. And I had to learn to recognize those environments so that I could do better for myself, because that is the truth. And even when it comes to seeking these environments, it happens in more than just a school. It can happen in a church, it can happen in a workplace, it can happen anywhere. I myself have never experienced it, but you will find within a lot of people's minds, especially within a lot of Christians, for example, I can speak from the Christian perspective, they will say, you can't say that you could do that's not humble, that's not humility. I have to remind you of something. Even when you go and you look at the Bible, you will never find an instance where Jesus denied his power. Jesus never had to self depreciate, he never had to tear himself down to show humility. But we do know him to be the most humble man who ever lived in the Christian faith. True humility is recognizing where the source of your talent, the source of your gift, the source of what you possess originates from. For me, true humility is saying, I know that I can do that. I know I can walk in a room and I can speak the room down. I know I could write a poem and have people crying. I know I can do that. But I can only do that because God enables me to do that. I can only do that because God has enabled me to have people around me, a community that feeds my life, that feeds my stories, that gives me strength, hope, and drive. I am only able to do what I am enabled to do through God. That is true humility. True humility is not someone complimenting you. Oh, that's not that. That's not. And I had to learn that. I genuinely had to learn that. I had to learn the difference between tearing myself down to build someone else up and recognizing that I am able to do something, and saying that does not make me arrogant. It makes me who I say I am. Having confidence does not mean that you are not humble. Knowing that you are able to do something does not take away from your humility. And so when it comes back to the word of the episode, that word, you have to be unapologetic about your gift. You have to be unapologetic about the way that you interpret the will and the light of God. You have to be unapologetic about the way that you interpret your talents. Because if you are constantly apologizing for what you are able to do, that's not you showing humility, that's you showing regret. You regret the fact that you are able to do these things. You regret the fact that you are able to walk on this avenue. You regret the fact that you are able to do something that someone else probably cannot do in the same capacity. You are not showing humility by denying who you are. And I would not, for me, I think dimming your light does not make the room, the people in the room glow around you any brighter than they already do. Turning your light bulb down, unscrewing it and plucking it out and breaking it up doesn't make anybody else glow brighter than you do. It just makes the room darker. It makes the situation darker. It makes everything around you seem all the more catastrophic and all the more painful and all the more tedious, because now I've taken out my light and this is how it works too. Because people follow suit in what we do in the same way that there are people who create environments where they feed off of our self-hatred and our self-depreciation. There are people who also look at us for an example. So if I see you dimming your light, well, let me turn my light down, because guess what? I see you dimming your light, you're just getting by. I want to get by too, so I'm going to dim my light. I don't have to shine, I'll be okay. It's okay if I don't shine in this circumstance. No. The more people that turn down their light, the more people that refuse their gifts, the more people that refuse to utilize their talents, the darker the room gets. And ultimately, the room will be in utter darkness. That's what's eventually going to happen. You have to learn to recognize who you are. It's like in Black Panther, when with the mummy named Queen Ramonda was like, show them who you are. You have to recognize who you are. And recognizing who you are does not make you any less humble. I'm still learning that to this day. Even down to stuff like this, for example, a lot of people don't know I'm an author because obviously now I'm not a jerk. I'm not gonna walk up to someone and be like, hey, I actually have 3 books. What you got? No. But a lot of people don't know I'm an author because that's not really who I am. As a That doesn't define me as the entirety of who I am. All right. And I'm not going to boast about it. I'm not going to, brag about it. But I thought in the past that saying that I have 3 books, or saying that I know how to write, or saying that I know how to use my talent made me seem arrogant. It made me seem prideful. It made me seem me. That's all it made me seem, right? That me, I, blah, 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 blah. But then I'm starting to realize too, there are opportunities whereas I opened up my mouth and said, well, actually, I have 3 books. Well, actually, I know how to write. And a whole world opened up for me because I said that. A whole world opened up to me because I confessed that I knew how to do something, that I have these credentials, that I have this ability. If you deny your ability, you deny yourself access to everything that you could become. When you apologize for your ability, you are denying yourself access to the confidence that God wants you to have. God wants you to be confident. God don't want you to be, oh, I'm not all of that. I ain't all that. No, God don't want you to be like that. God doesn't want you to be like that. And we think that he does because we often misinterpret the way he wants our relationship to be expressed. Or we often think that humility is defined by how much we can beat ourselves up. Listen, the greatest sacrifice that can ever be given is what Jesus did on the cross. But I don't have to sacrifice my self worth, right? I don't have to crucify my self worth in order to save someone else's ego. You have to let that one sit with you for a second. Hey, that was deep, right? That was good. You don't have to crucify your self worth, your confidence to satiate someone else's desire to be viewed on a pedestal. So you don't, and my cousin Daphne said it when we was by her. Me and my sister Jojo, we went by her one day. She say, no, I don't look down there. You come up here to me. I don't have to look down. I don't have to be down here looking up at you in order for us to work. No, you can come up and meet me at my level. So if you see me walk into a room and my light is shining and my light is bright, I'm not turning it down. You better get some sunglasses. You better make it work because this light is going to stay bright whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, my talent and my gift will make room for me. And in them making room for me, I will acknowledge that God was the one who enabled this to be so. So, because God enabled this to be so, it means that He believes I have the ability to do something. I have the ability to walk a path that no one else can take. So, yes, I am talented. Yes, I am amazing. Yes, I am wonderful. And I am all of those things because God allows me to be so. Point blank, period. Like there is no apology for that. There is no apology. That is unapologetically me. I'm impenitent. Word of the episode, right? I'm impenitent. I have no remorse for being who I am. I have no remorse for my gifts, and I have no remorse for what God has enabled me to do. And we have to learn to adopt that mindset. We have to begin saying to ourselves, I am not ashamed of who I am. I am not ashamed of what I can do. I am not ashamed of what I have been strengthened and empowered to become. And on the flip side of that, something I also realized too is to deny yourself access to your gift. For me, especially for me as a Christian, means that I am denying myself the ability to glorify God. If I am saying that my gift is talentless, it's worthless, it's nothing, then for me as a person, I am saying that the way I interpret God's energy and I express that is worth nothing. It's good for nothing. It's nada, zero, zilch. It ain't worth squat. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's not easy at all. It's not. It's absolutely not. You want to live a life that's filled in its entirety with the beauty of creation, with the beauty of light, love, joy, splendor, grace, majesty. You can never do that if you don't recognize your gifts. You can never do that if you are dimming down your gifts to appease others. You can never do that if your ego requires that other people dim themselves down to match what you think is the standard. You can never live a life that's complete and in its entirety without recognizing your gift and your talent, or your gifts in your talents, because you may have multiple. I only have a couple, you may have a dozen. It just depends on the type of person that you are. It depends on how you interpret that divine energy, that godly energy. It depends on how you do that. But if you live a life that's void of those gifts, if you live a life that doesn't pay tribute to that gift in some way, shape, or form, that doesn't pay tribute to that light that you have access to, you are not living a fulfilled life. I am not living a fulfilled life if I never wrote again, if I never spoke again, if I never even understood another poem, if I never interpreted another poem again. I would not be living a fulfilled life if I didn't use my talent, if I didn't use my gift. And there is nothing worse, I believe. I don't think there would be anything worse than coming to the end of your life and realizing that there were doors that you did not walk through. There were people that you didn't get to meet. There were experiences you didn't get to have because you were afraid of how people would see your gift. There is nothing worse than that, I believe. So, as I close out this episode, I encourage you this week to sit with your talent, sit with your gift, sit with the understanding of who you are. And if you don't know, do some soul searching. Look within yourself. Look, it's there. It's right there. Like right there. It's right. It's right there. Look deep within your heart. Find your talent. Find your gift. Recognize your talent. Recognize your gift and let it shine. This has been John Shaquille Poitier Jr., your host of Darling, I'm Depressed Again. Don't Tell My Mother. Signing off until next time.